Hello, my name is Julie Johnson Archer, and this webinar is on writing a film analysis. Throughout this webinar, I encourage you to ask questions through the chat room. If you have an assignment coming up that requires you to analyze a film, please let me know in the chat room which course you're taking. If I'm not going over that assignment already, I'll be sure to touch on your assignment if we have time. First, here is just a little bit about the Writing Center here at ACU Online. We have an updated video that walks you through the steps of making an appointment and submitting your paper. So if you've never made a tutoring appointment with the Writing Center, this video should be your go-to first step. But we work with students at any stage of the writing process. So don't feel like you have to have a polished, finished essay to make an appointment with us. We're happy to work with you even if you've just written a paragraph or an outline or a really rough draft. We welcome you to make appointments with us. All of our appointments by default are asynchronous, which just means you upload your paper to us and we will send you feedback via email within 24 hours of your appointment time. So if you send in a paper for an appointment on a Friday evening at 7 o'clock, then you'll receive feedback by 7 o'clock on Saturday evening. By the way, all of our tutoring slots are in Central Time. You can find our tutoring slots, our schedule, at this link here in the top right corner. Sign up for an appointment at WC Online. If you have any questions or you would like to request a phone or real-time appointment where we could set up a Zoom meeting and share a screen, you can request that at Online Writing Center at acu.edu, and we will work to accommodate those requests as often as we can. Sometimes in the term we fill up, and so we're unable to accommodate those during the busy times, but as often as we can, we definitely want to get to know you through real-time appointments as well. Then you can access resources and blog posts at our Writing Center's website, which is linked here at the bottom of the screen. All of the information in these slides will be accessible to you on our website. So if you go to our website after we're through this evening, you'll find both the webinar recording and the slides from this PowerPoint. So you can download these slides and click directly on all of these hyperlinks in the slides as well. That goes for every webinar we conduct. And if you're just joining us, welcome. We're just getting started with this evening's webinar, Writing a Film Analysis. So to wrap up information about the Writing Center, here is our submission process in 3 steps. First, schedule an appointment at WC Online. This reserves your spot and lets the tutor know, yes, you want an appointment with us. Be sure that you create the appointment and look in your inbox. You will receive a confirmation email if you've created it successfully. So if you don't receive that email, make sure you go back in and make sure you've saved that appointment. The second step is to actually go in and submit your paper, and that will take you through Canvas to submit. Then you'll wait to receive feedback from your tutor within 24 hours. I wanted to highlight a few upcoming webinars if you are interested. So directly after this webinar, if you are able to stick around, we have another webinar called a live edit. This is where my colleague, Dr. Constein, will go over dissertations and doctoral projects. So if you are a doctoral student, whether you've begun your dissertation or not, this is a good webinar to attend. You'll see what an editor is thinking when they're looking at your paper, what kind of questions they're asking. And also, if you are still learning and getting used to APA 7th edition, this webinar will discuss some of the particularities with dissertations and doctoral projects and making sure they are compliant with APA 7th edition. On Saturday the 5th, we have a webinar from article critique to literature review, writing about others' research. So in many programs, you're asked to critique articles and write annotated bibliographies, and even write a literature review. And so this webinar is geared on how to write about others' research in all of these different kinds of assignments, and how to synthesize, summarize, etc. So this is a really good webinar to attend for very, very many programs. Next, we have on the 8th, a doctoral writing as a nurse hospital case studies. So this is in our DNP series of targeted webinars. And this one is specifically for hospital case studies, and it's recommended for nursing 733 students. So if you are just joining us, welcome. I ask that as you're joining us, you open up the chat box and type in what program you're a part of, and you can also tell us where you're calling in from. Where I am right now in Fort Worth, Texas, we are having some rainstorms. So if we get knocked off of Zoom due to a power outage, we will just hop right back in and pick up where we left off. Hopefully that doesn't happen though. One more webinar I wanted to highlight before we get started with tonight's webinar is on the 9th of September. It's Avoiding Plagiarism with APA 7th edition. And we all need extra practice and advice for how to avoid plagiarism, and even beyond that, how to synthesize and incorporate other people's words ethically and effectively. So this is going to be a really good one, especially if you're still learning APA 7th edition as well. Okay, so for this webinar on writing a film analysis, I have gone ahead and selected a few assignments from various courses this term that involve film analysis. And we will go through each of these examples. Like I mentioned before, if you are in a different course this term that is not listed here on this screen, and you want me to look at your course because you have a film analysis in it, feel free to say so in that chat room, and I'm more than happy to tailor this webinar's information to those of you who are here today. My hope is that these 3 assignments and demonstrations that I go through will be useful even if you're not taking these specific courses this term. Maybe you'll take this course at a later time. Maybe down the line you'll have a different kind of assignment, like a case study, for example, is another really common assignment across many programs. And I think many of the same concepts that we'll go over this evening will apply to case study analysis and other types of analysis as well. Okay, so taking a look at our first assignment, this is from a Marriage and Family Therapy course in Ecology of Crisis and Trauma. So this particular assignment is about cinema therapy. I haven't said that out loud before. I'll be honest, I didn't even know before reading about it in this assignment that cinema therapy was a thing. I love movies though, and definitely believe they have the power to transform us and teach us a great deal about ourselves if we let them. So this assignment has already taught me something. If you are a therapist or counselor in training here in the audience, I'm sure you knew that already. But let's go ahead and take a look at this assignment about trauma stewardship. I'm going to reshare my screen, so give me a moment. All right, so now you should see a Canvas page. Let me know in the chat room if you don't see that. So this assignment asks us to select and watch one movie from the following list. We've got Precious, Good Will Hunting, and so forth. A lot of good movies here. Since I want to ensure that I'm not doing the work for you, however, if you're watching this and you're in this class, I'm going to choose a movie that's not from this list. Again, if you're taking this class, make sure you choose from this list. But for my example, I'm going to use James Baldwin's If Beale Street Could Talk. I love a good book turned movie. So this movie is really powerful depiction of what it was like to be Black in 1970s Harlem. James Baldwin is an incredible writer, and this movie is very true to the book, I would say. But in addition to dealing with the injustices of the American prison institution, this movie is an amazing depiction of Black intimacy and joy between the main characters. Tish and Fonnie are their names. So, scrolling down, I'll read the instructions here. Identify a character in the movie who has personally experienced or who is connected to someone who has experienced a crisis or trauma. Imagine you have been providing therapy to this character. As you've been working with this client, you have also experienced trauma fatigue. Okay, so this is a really cool assignment if you ask me. If you are a therapist or someone who is working with other clients in any form, this is going to ask you to put yourself into the movie in a specific way as a practitioner in your field, right? So I am going to take these instructions and I'm going to go ahead and put them into a template, our APA course template. Before I do, I'll show you where to grab that template if you haven't downloaded it before. So you go to the Online Writing Center's website, which you can access from any Canvas page. So the Online Writing Center's website, we have lots of resources, but if you go to APA 7, and under the tab APA 7 templates, that first link is our course paper template. Now I saw we have an EDD folks in the room. If you haven't already seen this EDD dissertation template, you can also download this to take a look and see how dissertations are formatted in APA 7th edition, specifically for ACU. We have a tutorial for how to use that template as well. And I also recommend that you stick around for the next webinar, which is a live edit of dissertations and doctoral projects. Really great resource for our doctoral students. So you're going to download the course paper template and pull it up in Microsoft Word, which you have access to for free as an ACU student. Let me show you now. Okay, so you now should see my template pulled up in Microsoft Word. Let me know if you don't see that. So here's the template, and you can just fill in all of this information as you see it. I often use the title of the assignment as my title. So in this case, it's called Cinema Therapy Trauma Stewardship. That's what I'm going to name this. Okay, fill in your name. The affiliation here before Abilene Christian University is just the program that you are a part of. In this case, we have an example here. It's the first one, Marriage and Family Therapy Program. You can leave Abilene Christian University. That is also your affiliation. This course is MFTO 697. So again, even if you're in a different kind of program or different course, your course number basically looks the same. Oops, sorry about that. MFTO. Okay, put your instructor's name. And for the date, you put the due date in general. So that's just a little overview of the title page and how to use that. We've already got it formatted in APA 7th edition for you with page numbers in the upper right corner. Things that are bolded are already there, like the title. I'm also going to show you the next page. This assignment did not ask us to include an abstract, so I'm going to just delete the abstract. Okay. Here we go. So now if you've never used the template before, you might want to get rid of these comments. Let me just demonstrate how to do that. If you click on the comment and go up to review in your Word document, sometimes it's hidden, but just click review again and it'll pop up. You'll have the option to delete that comment. And that's that. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the substitute content here. We don't need that. It is a good example, though, if you are still learning about different levels of heading in APA to see that visual example. All right, so like I said, I'm going to just paste in the instructions from Canvas. If you didn't see what I did there, I pasted special. And when you insert or edit and paste into Word, you can click keep text only, or you can click match destination formatting. And all that does is keeps the same font, the same spacing, and it makes it look a little bit more in line with APA 7th edition. Now, one more note about using the template, since I will be workshopping with it throughout this webinar, I want you to know and understand how to use it. In Word, I'm going to go up to the Home tab, and I'm going to open up the Styles pane. You can also just navigate the different styles here, but I like opening up the Styles pane just so you can see the current style, what that is, and what style you're wanting to apply. So here I'm going to use the body text style. If you go down past the different levels of heading, we have gone ahead and formatted body text. So that looks exactly like a paragraph in APA 7th edition. You don't have to manually do anything. You don't even have to add a tab at the beginning. It's all there for you. So I'm just going to do that for each of these. Body text, I'll get rid of the bullet points here. And if you have any questions about using the template or film analyses in general, go ahead and ask those in the chat room. And if you're just joining us, welcome. We are going over workshopping some examples of film analyses. And so if you have a film analysis coming up in one of your courses, be sure to let me know in the chat room what course you're in, and I can tailor my examples to you. Okay, so I've demonstrated how to begin using the template. Now I'm going to dig into this particular assignment. Like I often encourage students to do in other types of assignments, I encourage you to read the assignment instructions before doing the reading, or in this case, the watching of the movie. And that way you know what to look for as you're watching the movie. You can even jot down notes here if you've copy and paste the instructions into a template like the one I've provided. You can use this, open it up, and jot down notes while you're watching. Or if you're not that kind of movie watcher, you want to just watch it and not be distracted by a Microsoft Word, I don't blame you. You could just pull this up right after you finish watching the movie and jot down a few key themes or ideas, things related to this assignment that you remember. And that way, when you come back maybe the next day to write your paper, you'll have some really good notes, and you've already started off in a good APA 7th edition template. Okay, so here, let's begin. Before you even start answering the first question, the first thing you should do is have an introduction paragraph. So we actually don't need a title or heading for the introduction, so I'll delete that and go ahead and just write a filler sentence. So when you're thinking about the introduction for a film analysis, one thing you for sure don't want to miss is naming the movie that you chose. So this assignment gives you a choice of different movies. I've picked one that is different just so that I'm not doing any work for you. But I might include a sentence like this in your introduction. I'm gonna go ahead and make that not bolded. There we go. Okay, so I've given just a brief sentence about the movie where I name the movie that I chose. You'll notice that I used italics here. So anytime you include the name of a movie in an essay, you'll want to make sure that you italicize that title and use title case. So any word that's important in this movie title is capitalized. So in the movie, If Beale Street Could Talk, it's a 2018 movie, instances of trauma based on racism in the 1970s Harlem interrupt the characters' lives and have lasting effects. So this paper, again, is about trauma, and from an MFT, marriage and family therapy standpoint, you're going to be looking at this movie through the lens of a crisis or trauma that the main characters are experiencing. And so that's not all I want to write about trauma, but in the introduction, I don't need to go into too much detail. The first thing I'll emphasize in this demonstration is that it can be really easy to fall into the trap of over-summarizing the movie. You've just watched it and you want to write down everything that happened. And I could easily write down a lot more information about this movie than I have here. But this prompt is specifically, again, about trauma in the movie. And so what I'll do is try and specifically tailor this analysis to the trauma in the movie. Another thing you might include in an introduction paragraph for really any film analysis is kind of an outline or forecast of what else you are going to write about in this paper. So if we take a look at all of the things we're being asked to do, we're going to be summarizing the character and trauma in the movie, summarizing the treatment plan you would use with short and long-term goals for the character, describe the concept of trauma stewardship and ways in which you might experience your own trauma while treating this patient, and lastly, explain the 5 directions and describe ways you can use them for your client and yourself. So I'm going to give just a brief outline of the other things that I'm going to do in this paper, and that gives the introduction a really organized feel. You're setting up the rest of the paper here. I might have a citation here. Cinema therapy is an effective tool for trauma management. So you might also include other key concepts like trauma stewardship. That's a key concept, and practicing trauma stewardship with clients is important for many reasons. And since I'm not in this course, I'm being fairly broad here, but you might replace for many reasons with specifics. So why is practicing trauma stewardship so important? Give a reason or two here before we move on and enter into our other paragraphs. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. Paragraphs should usually be about 5 sentences long. Sometimes they're shorter though, and that's okay. So here, again, we're going to identify a character in this movie who's experienced or who's connected to someone who's experienced trauma or a crisis. All right, so I'm going to strike through this, but keep it there just in case I need a reminder of what the main instructions are. You'll, of course, want to delete any parts from the instructions before you turn in your paper. All right, so we're instructed to write a 5 to 6 page paper addressing the following things: a summary of the character and trauma. So before I do anything, I'm actually going to give myself a few headings. This can work as an outline for the rest of the paper. So for this first section, I'm going to call it Character and Trauma Summary. All right, so what you can do to make this look like a heading in our template is go over in the Styles pane and click APA Level 1. You can also create subheadings using APA Level 2 and so forth. But for this paper, it's pretty short. 5 to 6 pages is not too long, so I'm going to leave it at APA Level 1 headings, I think. Next, we have a summary of the treatment plan, so I'll just create another heading. And use APA Level 1, treatment plan and goals. Next section is on trauma stewardship. And then the 5 directions. And again, I'm not an MFT student, but I'm thinking that these 5 directions are something that you have learned about in your course readings, and you'll be incorporating those readings into your analysis here. So it says 5 to 6 pages, and here I've given myself, after the introduction, 4 headings. So each of these might be about a page or more, but what I'm going to consider here is what is the most important part of this analysis. Is it the summary of the character and the trauma, or is it my explanation of these key concepts from the course applied to the movie? And I'm going to go ahead and answer that. It's definitely going to be the analysis, the application of the key concepts from your course to that movie. So no matter if you are doing a film analysis for MFT or another program or course, the meatiest and most that you should spend time on is anywhere where you are applying course concepts to characters or things that happen in the movie, not plot summary or summary in general. But we are asked to summarize part of the movie as it pertains to one character in this example and trauma, the trauma or crisis that they experience. So I might be tempted to explain who is this character. And for my example, I'm going to go ahead and choose Tish, who is the main character of If Beale Street Could Talk. And I could give a whole summary of this character, what happens to her throughout the movie, etc. And I could probably write for 2 pages a summary here about all that happens to her and the trauma in the movie. But I'm going to suggest that you limit this summary to just a paragraph, maybe two at most, to explain briefly the character's experiences of trauma. So here I'm going to delete that information and start filling it in. So here is the gist of the character and the trauma she goes through. Tish watched her partner Fonnie unjustly taken to prison and undergoes a long process of trying to prove his innocence and free him. There's more to unpack there, and you certainly should make it a paragraph's worth of uncovering what exactly happens, where is the trauma, and what is the response. So there's more to say here, but I'm going to leave it at that. I'm just going to kind of give myself this outline, and you can do the same. You can go between different sections and add more. You don't necessarily have to write in this linear way from beginning to end, especially if you give yourself an outline like this. You can really easily go down a couple of sections and go back up to fill things in as you go. So there are many ways that Tish has experienced trauma, but I'm going to say that watching her partner being falsely accused of a crime he didn't do, and then feeling powerless in the face of a large system that seems built against her and against Fonnie, that's a point of trauma. And so I'm going to focus in on that in particular. Okay, so the next part is about the treatment plan and the goals, as if I were counseling Tish. All right, so again, this is now asking you to start applying yourself as a practitioner, a scholar practitioner in your field, and imagine that you were giving counsel to this character. So I'm going to jump down to this section. So you're working with Tish through a difficult time, through her trauma, and you are deeply affected by it. So first, you are to give a definition or description of this concept of trauma stewardship. And with that, you definitely will need scholarly citations. So this is another thing to remember whenever you are giving a film analysis, is that not only are you being asked to critique the film and think really deeply about what happens, you are also going to need to use theories and ideas from your field to back up those claims. So here I might insert in italics, just as a reminder, book chapter definition of trauma stewardship, right? And then I can, if I've done this before my readings that week, I can be looking for that definition and just plug it in into this template as I find it and make sure I give a citation. You might find that you watch a video as well in your course readings and course resources that explains what trauma stewardship can look like. Or gives a guide or some tips, some concrete ways to put this into action. And so you have probably a few citations in this paragraph where you discuss what is trauma stewardship in the context of marriage and family therapy, counseling, how would you apply it to this movie? So whenever you have the prompt in front of you, just like I have here, you're going to want to use the prompt language in your responses. So that's another good reason or argument for putting in the assignment instructions into your template or into your document, and then typing right into it. So for example, it says ways in which you might experience your own trauma responses while treating this patient. So I might write, okay, so the ways in which I might experience my own trauma responses while treating Tish include, and then I would list them and elaborate. I will strike through the question just to remind myself, yes, this is from the instructions. I'll need to delete that. But I like keeping instruction questions in front of me when I write, so I'll leave it there for now. And then again, here at the end, explaining those 5 directions and how you would apply them. This part will require you to include citations to course materials too. And this section might even be the most important section of this paper. I'm not the professor, but I would think that this is where a lot of the application is going to happen. So how would you productively move forward through these challenges with Tish experiencing trauma, with you experiencing some trauma of your own, serving her? And this exercise is really productive, right? Because then when you do go into your practices and experience things similar or work with similar cases, you'll have thought through this not only with the help of a movie, but through applying these key course concepts to this one example. So overall, this assignment asks you to use the movie as a tool for explaining concepts in your practice. So the movie is really not the main focus. It's not really the point. That sounds a little counterintuitive for a film analysis, but think about it this way. How is this assignment going to help you become the scholar practitioner you hope to be? And it really should help you imagine potential scenarios and put yourself into them. And sometimes even using case studies will also do this for you if you're working on case studies in your courses. So making these connections is good preparation for effective future practices. Okay, so I have worked through this example. In our template, you also have a references page, so you would include all the references that you use in your paper, including the movie. So let me go ahead and pull up another example. Again, if you are in the audience and you have a film analysis from a different course, definitely let me know, and I'm happy to look at that with you. So let's go to a different example in the meantime. So this is from a different program, the Conflict and Resolution program. Okay, so this assignment is My Big Fat Greek Wedding Film Analysis. So this is again from Conflict and Resolution. This course is in family conflict dynamics, so that makes sense why you might watch this movie. I actually watched this movie recently, the night before I got married in a bicultural marriage. It was highly appropriate. But let's just say I'm glad my wedding was almost exactly the opposite of Tula's in this really big wedding that she has. Getting married in the pandemic really poses some challenges to having a really big, fat Greek wedding. So we were happy to have a really small wedding. But I think watching this movie at this time and, in this context of social distancing is also a really interesting layer to add as you watch Tula's big family get together. So let's take a look at this assignment and walk through it. So it says, critically analyze and discuss the My Big Fat Greek Wedding motion picture, responding to the following prompts. Identify areas of apparent conflict in this film, as well as areas of potential conflict in this film. Then provide an opinion on which of these conflicts could potentially be constructive rather than destructive. And we have the paper specs here. So I went ahead and took this information and put it into a template. So I kind of skipped over some of that initial information that I did last time. I filled in the title page already, and I copy and pasted in the instructions from the assignment. Now you'll notice not only do I italicize titles of movies in text, but I also do that in the title of my own paper. So I again titled it the same as the assignment, My Big Fat Greek Wedding Film Analysis, and italicized just the movie title within my title. Okay, so this says create a Word document. We did that. I can delete that from the paper specs. Include your word count on your title page, 1,500 words. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself a note here under the due date. Sometimes professors ask for a word count, and you can just plug it in there at the end of your title page. 1,500 words is about 6 pages, not including the title page or the references pages. So generally that's how word counts or page counts work. You don't include any of the front material or the end reference material. Or if you have an abstract, you don't include that in the word count either. So this time, instead of using My Big Fat Greek Wedding, I think I will use, just for this example, the movie Crazy Rich Asians. All right, so I'm plugging this into my introduction paragraph. And so again, I would include not only an introduction paragraph, or I would include an introduction paragraph in addition to anything else that the instructions say. So even if it doesn't say write an introduction paragraph, in general, as a tip, I would say always write an introduction paragraph. And if you're unsure about what to include, look at what the rest of the paper asks you to do and lay that out. Say what you're going to do in the rest of the paper in your introduction. So this is about family conflict, right? And so again, I'm going to try my best to avoid summarizing the whole movie of Crazy Rich Asians and instead focus on summarizing conflict in the movie. If we go down, there was one more thing I wanted to point out. So I copied the rubric in here as well from the assignment. It says that the student provided an overview of the main conflicts identified in this movie, no more than 2 conflicts. So that wasn't included in here in the introduction or in the instructions. So it's really important to look at the rubric to see, there was actually this extra thing that I'll be graded on. And look, 40 points. That's the most points out of all of these sections. So I better not use more than 2 main conflicts. So that narrows my summary even further. I'm not going to talk about all of the different conflicts in this movie. I need to just choose what I see as the most important to, or the most relevant to, for discussing conflict in families. So let me give you an example. sentence that you might have in your introduction paragraph. So here's an example sentence that you might include in your introduction paragraph. The movie Crazy Rich Asians is a romantic comedy that contains many instances of conflict based on the clashing of cultural perceptions, gender, and different socioeconomic classes. So I've chosen what I perceive as the two key conflicts, that which is gender related and class related. There are definitely other types of conflict in this movie. Infidelity or faithfulness in relationships might be another really big theme that you could draw on. So just choose two in the movie that you're watching, and make sure that you justify why you're talking about those two conflicts. So then you might fill in the rest of this introduction as I've discussed. And I've given myself these headings with the rest of the prompt to outline my paragraphs. So identifying areas of apparent conflict, you might need to define what apparent conflict is first. And in fact, I suggest you do. So I'm going to give myself a note. So you might have a sentence like apparent conflict as so-and-so author or researcher defined to mean is clear in a few key scenes of this movie. For example, when ... and list out some examples in the scenes of the movie that demonstrate apparent conflict. But having that reference to the definition from a key scholar or resource in your weekly readings is going to bring this analysis up to par, right? Your professors are looking for you to apply what you know from the resources that you've read to this film. So you'd want to do that for both apparent and potential conflict. Give at least a citation or two to back up whose definition. Maybe there's different definitions out there. Whose definition are you going on? And how does that theory or idea come out in this film? So let me give you just a couple examples from this movie. Thinking about apparent conflict in Crazy Rich Asians, there's some obvious conflict between Rachel, the main character, and her boyfriend's mother, Eleanor. So in this apparent conflict section, I might give myself a note. After watching, I realize, oh, that was a really good example. So let me jot it down. Okay, so I've given an introduction kind of sentence that says, all right, there are cultural differences that involve gender roles and family expectations of gender, which are clearly an area of apparent conflict in this movie. So that might be a good topic sentence that's introducing the main idea of this paragraph. But then I need to give more in-depth examples and details from the film. So I'm going to use that transition phrase, for example, to signify that I'm about to show something from the film to prove or demonstrate this idea. So there's a scene where Eleanor is teaching Rachel how to make dumplings, and she describes her own duty when she was younger to give up everything for the sake of honoring a husband's family. Um, and she also implies that, she doesn't approve of Rachel's more Western, independent lifestyle and different family expectations. So I might dive in to a little bit more detail from this example. But remember, the goal is not to summarize the whole scene, but use that briefly, use the brief summary as an example of apparent conflict or of whatever theme and theory you're using. So I would do the same for potential conflict. And I'll give you an example also of a transition sentence between these two headings, between these two sections. So even though these are distinct sections, you want to make sure that you're still transitioning smoothly and logically between them. Okay, so I've given myself this little transition sentence, and you'll notice it's not very long, but it does the trick. It says, unlike apparent conflict, potential conflict is when ... And again, that would probably be good to include a citation, a definition from one of your resources in your week's readings. So then you're going to identify a few areas of potential conflict. And it's always good to use the words in the assignment instructions. So one example of potential conflict is when ... So you go through the instructions like so. One more thing to note is that in this particular assignment, it says not to quote your sources. So instead, you need to paraphrase all of your sources and put them into your own words. So that's a really good thing to note ahead of time. You might plug in some quotes as you go here, but make sure that before you turn it in, you paraphrase them and summarize those ideas in your own words. Always give a citation, though. Okay, so for the last couple of minutes before I turn things over, if you're just joining us, you are in the right place. The next webinar is a live edit for doctoral students, so stick around for that. So let me wrap things up by going back to my slides. I included some of these assignments just in the slides for you to look at. One more thing I wanted to make a note of before we wrap up is how to cite a movie in APA 7th edition. So in your references, it should look like this. For example, with the Dead Poets Society, we've got the director first, their last name, first initial, and in parentheses, we put director because that is their role. Sometimes you might want to highlight a producer or particular actors, and if that's the case, APA says you need to put their role in parentheses. In general, though, just put the director's name. Then you put the year in parentheses that it was produced, and the name of the movie. And I actually have an issue here I should have edited. This should be in sentence case, which means only the first word should be capitalized. So Dead would be capitalized, but poets and society would be lowercase. So that's my bad. I'll go and fix that before posting these. You do need the descriptor here that it is a film. So when you're citing more uncommon things in APA, like films or videos or blogs, anything like that, you're going to put that descriptor in those brackets to let your readers know what type of resource this is. And then here is the production company. If there is a URL, you can include that. In text, your citation will include the director and the year. So I've given you an example here. Okay, so at this point, I've got a few more resources here for you. I'm going to turn the room over to my colleague, Dr. Considine, for our next webinar. Thank you so much. I will stick around. If you have questions about film analyses, definitely ask those in the chat room. And I hope you have a great rest of your evening.